All right. Hi, everyone. Maddy from smith.ai and Matt from Help Docs here. We will get started in a minute, but just wanted to say welcome. And if you have any questions, you can use the chat feature on the right side. Feel free to upload an avatar for yourself and say hi, and maybe a little bit about your business.
Cool. So we've got about a minute until we start, is that?
Yep, exactly. And then we'll go for about an hour.
Yep.
All right. And then and this is being recorded, so we will share this session, and you will also have access to the slides. I am just going to get started, get right into it. One housekeeping note is the deck link is available. It is bit.ly/smith.ai_helpdocs_webinar. And that is accessible to everyone before and after this webinar. You can view the slides and also links within them. We link to a couple different resources, so you will be able to view those slides yourself. And then Matt and I also share our email addresses at the very end. You can get in touch with us if you have any questions after this session, and we would be happy to help you, whether it's with implementing a knowledge base on your website or with virtual receptionist services for phone and chat. So the topic today is how to convert more leads and serve clients better with knowledge bases and virtual receptionists. We'll be focusing on affordable and professional strategies for solo business owners and small business owners. So just as an introduction, I'm Maddy Martin. I'm the head of growth and education for smith.ai. I've been in digital marketing communications for the last 10 plus years, running marketing for 3 tech startups. And smith.ai is a virtual receptionist service for live calls and web chat. We kind of combine human intelligence with US-based receptionists with artificial intelligence or machine learning to kind of empower the receptionist to do a more accurate and efficient job, to be able to achieve more on a call or a chat, and really drive high accuracy with their responses, and be very efficient in delivering them. Matt, do you want to do a brief introduction?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name's Matt Bradford-Onger. I'm the education lead at helpdocs.io. I've got about 7 years in content marketing and support, just kind of around those sort of areas. And right now I am focused on encouraging people down a more kind of customer-centric line with their support and documentation and things like that. So HelpDocs itself is a knowledge-based software application, and we serve clients everything from small business owners and solopreneurs right the way through to like FTSE 100 kind of companies and enterprises and things like that. So everyone across the spectrum who reaches that point of needing to help their customers self-serve in a more customer-centric way.
Awesome, thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about our goals and objectives here, what you're going to learn. So, and I will just say, like, I'm going to do a lot of talking in the beginning, and then Matt's going to kind of take over for the second half, just so you have a sense of expectations there. But what you're going to learn, so how to identify whether you need a knowledge base, the right questions to answer in your website FAQ, how to incorporate FAQ, including how to address content placement and formatting, and then how to direct web visitors to FAQ and how they can better qualify leads in a self-service way. And then best practices for building a knowledge base that address clients' most common questions, best practices for capturing, qualifying, and converting those website leads, before and after kind of that FAQ access. Best practices for referring and monetizing bad leads, so people who kind of self-identify or you identify as not good potential clients for your business, and then how to automate and outsource that lead capture and client intake process using technology and also kind of live and AI services. So what do knowledge bases and receptionists deliver? Results that you can kind of expect are, higher web lead conversion and marketing ROI, less personal contact, basically fewer interruptions from bad leads through better self-filtering, increased responsiveness to leads and clients, improved client satisfaction and experience through being able to access that information on their own, reduced repetitive inbound queries, so really almost automating answers to those most common questions, reducing routine tasks and unnecessary distractions, so maybe making your calendar really easily accessible and describing how you schedule appointments in these FAQ, and then automating workflows for greater hands-off efficiency. Who cares? Well, so I'm going to use law firms as an example here, but this really spans across all small businesses. We see this every day at Smith.ai. I'm sure that you hear a lot about this too, Matt. That time is a really limited resource, and it's super valuable and important, but it is the most limited resource that we have. For an attorney, what we find, and again, I'm saying that we're seeing this across all small businesses, but this is data that I have readily accessible that is really easy to kind of like get the lay of the land here. So 1.9 hours out of an entire day is spent on billable work. So consider, if you're a small business owner, how much of your time is actually spent on billable work, chargeable work that you can actually spend with clients making money. Now, that's a really small portion of your time, right? 23 minutes is how long it takes to recover from an interruption. And think about how often you're getting interrupted a day. For attorneys, we know on average it's 6 times a day, which amounts to about a 2-hour loss in productivity. Now, at the same time, we know that 2 hours goes towards business development, indicating like the importance of generating new clients. And we know that business growth and sustainability is very important just because of the sheer amount of time that small business owners like solo and small firm attorneys, financial planners, IT consultants are working on this. Now, 2 out of 3 potential clients say their decision to hire is most influenced by an attorney's response to their first call or email. Now, increasingly, that's also including web chat. So how responsive are you using the channel that they prefer as they make an outbound outreach to you? Now, 59% are the people who still don't hire an attorney or a financial planner or an IT consultant, even after that initial consult. So what you're seeing is a huge waste of time spent on consults with people who are maybe not well informed about your business or haven't done that self-qualification step that maybe we can stem using really great web content for people to get more educated about your business and get information before they schedule the consult so that we can screen them in and out better before that first call or email and that interruption. So what does that mean? Well, there are kind of conflicting goals here, because as a small business owner, you want to reduce your interruptions, but you also know the importance of being really responsive to new potential clients. So you want to respond to those calls and emails and maybe web chats or Facebook messages, but you want to reduce the interruptions. And frankly, the best way to do that is to stem them and then to also outsource that initial contact. And we'll talk about that. The other conflict is the importance of tech versus the cost of implementation and the research time and kind of reducing your control. Are you in a position where you can afford the tech that does build in efficiency and productivity? Do you understand the tools that are best for your small business needs? And then how much time does it take to implement that? Now, also, we're thinking about the short term versus the long term. So are you really trying to every single day just serve the clients that you have? Do you have the bandwidth to address how you're attracting and converting future clients? It's very easy to say, I'm just going to, put the fires out right now, but it's important that you also spend time right now to build in systems and processes to look out for your future self, so to speak. Now, what does this result in? Low responsiveness results obviously in a poor experience for new potential clients, but also for existing clients. People who need your help, if there's only one of you and you haven't put this information online, they're going to wait for you to respond to them to get the answer that they need. Now, wasted time and energy is also something that ends up being the experience of not only you as a small business owner, but also for your clients. They may find that they're poring over your website and they can't find the information that they need, which is deeply frustrated, and that may actually result in them contacting you already in a bad mood, whereas you can, by making information more accessible, not only get them the information that they need, but also not have that frustration level when they do actually call you if they still need to. Or if they've scheduled a consultation with you. It can also result in missed revenue and a wasted marketing budget. So if you have people who are coming to your website and can't immediately kind of like understand what you're doing, they may bounce before they actually schedule an appointment with you. And they may be a good potential client, but they don't know because the information on your site is not accessible. Also, we find that people who are trying to do all of these things themselves and answer every single phone call and email on your own, especially as a small business owner, it's resulting in really poor work-life balance and high stress. And the thing is that I find when I talk to a lot of small business owners is that you went into a small business to have more control over the work that you're doing and your work-life balance and kind of like set up what your day-to-day is like. But by having all of these constraints and demands on your time, you are experiencing less control than you were really hoping to have. So if you're spread too thin, what we're going to talk about today are some resources that can help you using really great like plug and play technology and services that you can hand off some of this initial content delivery and filtering of these new potential clients. So what you can do is you can increase the opportunity for new and existing clients to DIY and then streamline what we call as do it for me. And you may not be as familiar with that acronym, but that's something that's kind of like the opposite of the DIY, identifying the things that are in your camp that you can't allow people to do for themselves. Like, how do you streamline the do it for me? How do you streamline like that responsiveness or outsource it to receptionist services or make your calendar, for example, available on your website? So the 3 steps here are reducing your involvement in routine communications and administrative tasks. So how can you empower people through self-screening, through content, through online scheduling links, document automation, online payments, to do things that they're constantly calling you to have you do for them that they can actually do themselves with the right technology. How do you increase efficiency? By kind of defining processes that you have and then building them out in a streamlined way, so you're not spending the time like recrafting an email every single time that you've spent, that you know how it goes every time, but you're writing it anew for every new client who contacts you. And then making sure that these are being synced with your business software, whether that's contact management or marketing automation or your calendar. And then the last thing is setting expectations. So making sure that you're really clear about boundaries and how you want to communicate with clients and how they can reach you. Now, if you have, for example, and I'll talk about this, a calendar link, it's really important that you say, these appointments are for new potential clients, or these appointments are for existing clients only, so that people know when they're DIY that they're doing it in a way that you have kind of indicated is the way that you operate, and they're not making guesses or scheduling appointments with you in the wrong way. For example, if you charge for consultations, that workflow with your online calendar may include making a payment before the appointment is confirmed. For existing clients, you may have a different workflow. So it's really important that you're upfront and you say to people who are viewing your calendar, for example, this is an appointment type for a new client, or this is an appointment type for an existing client, and set those boundaries so that they can effectively DIY with confidence that they're doing it the right way, that ends up getting them the result that they need. So let's just talk really quickly about this conversion flow. When people come to your website, because we're talking about using these tools to improve the conversion of leads in addition to serving clients better. So how do people find you? They may find you online. They may find you through referrals from existing clients or people know about your business. Online could mean social media. It could mean local listing sites. It may mean organic or paid search. It may mean like articles that you've written on other websites. There are a number of different ways that people are reaching you. It could even mean offline, like people who are finding out about you from events, and then they're typing in your website later on to directly find information on your business. So it may be offline to online. Now, the contact methods that people are using could be phone, email, text, web chat, and then the response method. So these go for both human responses where you're picking up your phone or an assistant is, to outsource services like receptionist services, or even AI bots where it's a web chat that is, being staffed by a live person, or AI bots. Now, also, we're kind of thinking about a response method that's passive but available as a knowledge base, right? So how is that content that you have also a passive response method that people can access? Now, there's a qualification step where we have good leads and bad leads, where we're trying to screen out the people who come to your site, who heard about you through any of those different sources, whether or not they're a good potential client for you. Again, we're just talking about people who haven't yet hired you here. And using the information, whether it's provided by a live person or a bot or the content on your website, to help them filter actively or passively to determine if they're good for the next step, which is intake or scheduling. So addressing that statistic that I talked about before, around 59% of people who schedule that consult who still don't hire you, we want to reduce that number, meaning we want to increase the people who, when they have a consult with you, they have been better screened and they are more likely to be someone that should hire you. So when you have the consult, your success rate is higher in converting them into a new client. Now, the next step of, what to do with those people who are not a good potential fit, you can refer them to other businesses who may be a better fit. So let's say you're a mat consultant and people are contacting you about working on PCs. You may have a really great friend or partner where you're referring people to their business and they're referring people to your business if they contact you erroneously about working on their systems that you don't actually work on. If you're an attorney, maybe you're a family law attorney and someone contacts you about criminal defense, maybe there's a criminal defense firm that you recommend them to, and you may actually have a relationship that not only builds goodwill by giving that person a good experience and they feel like you save them from going back to Google search and finding someone else who may or may not be a good fit. But actually what we find is that a lot of small business owners are getting a small kickback or monetary benefit from those referrals that they have in place. Oh, thank you so much. This person hired me. Here is a token of my appreciation. And you can do that for people who refer to you. And you can also have that come into you as kind of a passive revenue stream for people that you recommend to other firms. And then obviously, there are different time frames when intake happens. Sometimes someone is a really good potential client and they don't schedule that appointment with you, or they do and they don't hire you right away. So how are you following up with them with good content via email and also making the information available on your website so that you can have that readily available as they assess whether or not to hire your company. You can also have email drips that are set up that have content in them, and then maybe also link to a web FAQ or knowledge base for more information if they want to dive deeper. You could also include testimonials and other content in there. Then in this scenario, for example, where you are converting them and they're ready to hire you, then you have that initial like intake appointment and you gather their information. Maybe that's in person or online, and then they become a new client. So that's kind of the workflow that we're talking about here. When we talk about effective uses of human and machine intelligence, here's how we're kind of thinking about it. Human intelligence is what the actual content is, whether that's in your email or in that's the greeting that you use or the conversation and script, so to speak, that you use with your phone and your web chat, your email templates. That's going to be written and crafted by you or someone at your company or with the help of a receptionist service or something like that. Now, the machine intelligence component is, what are you using to incorporate the knowledge base into your website? How are you connecting this back into your contact lead capture in your CRM or intake software? How are you tracking the calls that come in, for example, with your phone system? What actions are triggered? So if someone schedules an appointment with you and you send them information to prepare them well for that appointment, maybe that includes automatically a link to your knowledge base. So how are we thinking about the integrations versus the actual content itself? Now, what I am recommending is that, you increase your response times to new and existing clients so that it's really predictable and so that you don't miss out on leads, because we know that responsiveness initially is a big indicator of whether or not they're going to hire you. Even if it's a warm referral, it's really important that you respond as fast as possible and don't let people go to voicemail. Don't let even people complete the contact form on your website. I really encourage you to have, and I'll talk about this, web chat that immediately is available for people to interact with before they even call or email, which can also reduce interruptions. So when you're setting up these systems, make sure also that you have the technology in place to be responsive. So do you have a phone system that is your personal cell? Like, as a small business owner, we see this often. I really recommend you having a business phone number so that when calls come in or texts come in, that those are business related and not personal. Also, make sure that you have spam blocking, because we find a lot of small business owners are not even picking up their calls because they get so much spam that they are using voicemail as a screening method. I really recommend that you don't do that. It's not a good experience. And for that, for the 5 out of 10 calls that are legitimate, if you're getting that much spam, there are better methods for filtering out the spam so that you can pick up the phone or someone else can pick up the phone for you and be responsive instead of trying to screen them with voicemail. Now, if you have trouble with responsiveness, I also encourage that you have call blasts or sequences set up so that all of the people at your company have the ability to respond promptly, or you have a receptionist service that is answering those calls and then determining should they transfer them to you, can they qualify that new lead as a good potential client and then transfer them, or schedule a callback or appointment on your calendar. You can also set up your phone system so that VIP or existing clients are routed differently and that those people are routed to you or to a receptionist service with priority. I also really recommend that in terms of converting more potential clients, you have a very systematized process where if you can identify the new client criteria, then you can translate that not only to a receptionist service, and Matt will talk about how this applies to knowledge bases, but you can say, here are the questions that you need answered to determine, is this person a good potential client? These are things that that maybe you just haven't set the process really in writing, But I would encourage you to say, what are the, based on the clients I really have liked working with most, and even those who you didn't, what kind of clients do you want to attract now? So identify those questions and then use that to ask questions of people maybe before they schedule an appointment on your website. This is the information that you need to have a first successful appointment, and also to screen out good leads from bad. One of the things that can be done is, even on your contact form, let's go back to the attorney example. Maybe you only do family law and Social Security. You could say, here is the two options. Before you actually even submit a contact form saying the person wants to work with you, pick which of the two things apply to you. Yes, this is a family law matter. Yes, this is a Social Security disability matter. If they can't pick either of those, then they don't even submit the form, and they think, oh, maybe this isn't the right law firm for me, because what I'm looking for is criminal defense. I got, this matter that I need help with an attorney. Also think about capturing information from them that is relevant to you doing a better job with your marketing. So as you're doing appointment scheduling, ask them how they heard about you. Did they hear about you from a Google search or from a referral? If it's a referral, can they put the person's name into a text field and share that information with you so that they can thank the person for referring, or you end up making a payment to that person if they hire you as a client. Now, as soon as you have this identified, the great thing is you can have this process that can be handed off so that you're not responsible for doing all of this immediate responsiveness. We know that it matters. What we also know is that it doesn't matter for it to be handled by you personally. So if you have this process, you can hand this off to a live receptionist or to a web chat agent, even automate with a chat bot after hours to say, the person is saying, hey, I'm interested in hiring your IT firm. I run a law firm and I need new systems set up, or I need my phone system set up. You could say, great, it sounds like we can help you. Here's a link to our calendar. All of these processes can be baked out, whether it's live or automated. Now determine, how are you going to help these new potential clients? Are you going to, in your calendar, send them a link to an invite for a Google Hangout or a phone number to call? Are they free or paid? The better you are at screening out before the consult happens, the more you can make consults free, right? If you have a calendar link and you're finding that people are scheduling time with you and they are no-shows or they're not good potential clients, one of the best things that you can do is to have them be paid consultations, because it really says to people, how serious are you about hiring me? Are you willing to pay for this? Now, for people who are serious, what you can say up front is that this will be credited to your first bill. So it's actually not an extra cost to you. But for people who are not serious, it does make them think, do I want to spend this person's time that's valuable and my own time to evaluate if I'm actually going to hire this company? And then you can outsource this. So for inbound calls, you can have receptionists use this qualification process and go through these steps and determine, are they a good potential client? And then they're in charge of that, scheduling that new consult or that warm transfer. For inbound, for example, if you have people who do complete that contact form on your website, you can actually auto forward those to a receptionist service and have them make calls back immediately to say, hi, thanks so much for submitting that, inquiry on the website. Did you, want to schedule a consultation with this person? Or I need a bit more information to better prepare technician Joe or attorney Jane for that first consultation. Now, what you can do to even stem that further is, for inbound web visitors who are on your website, you can have chat proactively do all of these things to prevent even that phone call, even that inbound contact form. It can also help direct people to resources on your website that Matt will talk about with that knowledge base. So I talked a little bit about the phone receptionist. One of the things that's a really good experience now, speaking about the existing client experience and making their satisfaction higher, is having that immediate responsiveness to some of their needs that we haven't covered. So, for example, when you have clients who are not necessarily paying their bills on time or they have late payments, outsourcing that to a collections agency is going to cost you sometimes 30-50%. Doing it yourself may also not be the best option, because what we find is that for people who are small business owners, they have a personal relationship with their existing clients, and it's not really the most comfortable thing to talk about finances. So using a receptionist service to make those outbound calls before or after a late payment happens, to make sure that you're collecting the most money that you can from the revenue that's due to you, and then also making their experience better and not so uncomfortable and talking to you about money, is to outsource that as a call from the receptionist service. This is not so much a web chat application, but really a live call from someone who is calling on your behalf to collect that payment, and they're much more likely to say, yes, I can pay that bill, and not pull on your heartstrings because they have a personal relationship with you. It can also be a way to provide really responsive tier 1 support, and just to allow people to say, here's the issue that I'm having, have the receptionist respond, and then they can triage that call so that your team, whether they're technicians or whether they're attorneys, is really, kind of like only spent on the most valuable tasks, whether that's technician work or it's practicing law, so that initial responsiveness and that triaging is happening with someone who is not a specialist, but their time is a lot less costly than yours. Now, with website chat, one of the things that I always highlight is having a disclaimer. And this can honestly, the case here is for legal matters. Oftentimes we want to establish that, the chat is not an indication of an attorney-client relationship. It's also not constituting legal advice. But one thing that you could say here, if you're running an IT company or even financial planning firm, is this is not financial advice, or this is not technical help. This is just kind of an initial responsiveness to a team that can get you to the resources that you need. So it's really serving as a gatekeeper. You can also link to your payments if you have them online. This could be a link that's on your website that the web chat is able to, or even the receptionist is able to point web visitors to, or it could be a private link that you only make accessible to the chat agents or to the receptionists themselves, and they can complete it either over the phone or link to it in the chat if you want to make it accessible to people. But you don't want to have that link just like on your website. And this is something that you can build in to your knowledge base as well, so that people can access this information, and you can say, this is how I can accept payments. One of the ways is check, one of the ways is online e-check or credit card processing, and then share the link. So this is something you can embed in articles within your knowledge base as well. So Matt is going to talk a lot about the actual setup of the online knowledge base. I definitely encourage not just putting information on here that is linking to payments or clear descriptions of your services, but also an overarching view. For example, Kim Bennett runs a virtual law practice. Yes, there's a lot of utility and functionality within a knowledge base. It can also be a way to dive deeper into the about of your small business so that people can get more information, where you don't necessarily need this information on your main pages of your website, but you want to give people access to this information in a knowledge base sort of format. So I want to make sure that there's time for Matt to kind of go through his slides. This is an example that I kind of show for Justine Nichols. She's an attorney running a criminal defense solo practice in Fort Collins, Colorado. You can review these and also view her website at nicholslawoffices.com with your slides on your own time, and see some of these examples that put into practice what I'm recommending. This is that intake form that I mentioned that has kind of boundary setting within it from Cooper Law in Minnesota. And I just encourage you to kind of check out those resources and examples, emulate what people are currently doing, and identify what you like and what you don't like, and kind of bring that into your business. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and it does make sense to kind of explore other websites. Maybe they're competitors to your business. Maybe they're in other business areas, and you want to kind of adopt what practices they've built in for improving responsiveness to their new and existing clients. Matt?
Great. Yeah. So those examples looked really cool. And I like your kind of tip about not necessarily just sticking to like functional articles and things like that. Sometimes having that deep dive can be a really useful thing. But what we find is that a lot of people, particularly when they come to us in terms of like through our website, through our live chat and things like that, they're almost not ready for that knowledge-based step just yet. And the thing is, the big question that they are missing is whether or not they actually need a knowledge base. And what you need to be kind of asking yourself at that stage, or, you know, if you're thinking about a knowledge base and if you're kind of not sure just yet, is whether or not your team are being bogged down by repetitive support tickets. If they are, then great, you're one step closer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that investing in kind of this higher spec knowledge-based software with things like search functionality and integrations with all these different tools, it doesn't necessarily mean that's like the best step just yet. The first step into that self-service kind of journey is always going to be an FAQ page. And what I mean by an FAQ page is literally just a page on the website that has those kind of those frequently asked questions that you can click on and it'll expand and answer. That is your first step. If you haven't already got that, then I wouldn't suggest yet jumping into a full-on knowledge-based software. The point at which you kind of, in fact, let me just say why, I suppose. An FAQ first approach, it'll give you that kind of immediate impact. You're immediately going to see the number of support tickets that you've been wasting all that time on that Maddy spoke about at the beginning just dramatically decrease. Like the number of people who are saying, oh, how do I contact you? Or what kind of services do you provide? Or what kind of, timescale should I expect to hear back from you? They're all things that you can just answer straight away. And you don't need to waste the 25 minutes recovery time and the 5 to 10 minutes actually responding to these people. It's a great way to just make sure that those kind of communications are left out of your lead queue. And ideally, an FAQ page is the first step in self-service, and it's always going to set you up for success later on down the line. It's going to get you thinking about what your customers are struggling with from the outset. It's not just going to be like a case of being presented with this fancy kind of software and going, okay, but where do I start? That's always going to be the kind of the big problem. And again, it helps you tackle those kind of the main issues that your customers are dealing with. Now, when it comes to an FAQ page, the key is asking the right questions. And like I said, it is about having that empathy and having a little bit of, I guess most of it is common sense and logic, and thinking, okay, well, what do people need to know before they can get in touch with me or before they are that qualified lead? And if you can answer that kind of at that first stage in an FAQ page, then everybody else that gets to contact you is going to be, a step further down the line. So yeah, having empathy and understanding how your customers are using your product or your service or whatever it is that you're providing, understanding how your users ask and use terminology is going to really help you kind of figure out how to actually word these questions. And when it comes to actually wording these questions, avoiding like technical jargon, things like me personally, just to draw on a personal experience, things like property law and things like that. When you're talking about conveyancing, there's literally no point in you putting down learn about conveyancing or something like that if somebody doesn't know what conveyancing is. Learn about property law, great. that's what you're going to go with. Avoid that jargon at that kind of first entry stage. So if you do think you're ready for a knowledge base, chances are that your customers, now these were gifts, just so you know, but chances are your customers.
Oh, shoot, sorry, Matt.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I noticed it earlier, but it's all good.
I saw them. They were so cool too. You guys will have to check out the actual slide deck to watch them.
Yeah. So basically what's going to be happening is your customers are going to be scrolling so much just to find an answer to a simple question that they're going to be contacting you frustrated. That's the point, you know, you have to kind of do something a little bit more intense with your self-service. And that's going to be things like including a search engine and categorizing properly and making sure that everything is just working properly. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of run through kind of some tips and things just to get you kind of almost kind of best practices to kind of get you started with structuring your knowledge base and writing a good customer-centric article. And everything that we talk about is from this customer centricity kind of angle, meaning that the customer comes first no matter what your kind of business goal is. Obviously, we've spoken about the business, about qualifying leads. Well, if you put the customer first, then that's always going to happen anyway. If you're not meant to get a customer because they're not looking for your kind of services, there's no point in you kind of giving them loads of information about the services that you do offer, because it's just going to frustrate the issue. So let's talk about getting started with categories and taxonomy and stuff. So when we talk about categories and taxonomy within your knowledge base, we're talking about how you're using those categories to create a customer-centric experience. And this, again, boils down to understanding your users and understanding how they're using your knowledge base themselves. Like I said before, a lot of it's empathy and a lot of it is logic, and not being afraid to kind of use categories within your knowledge base and subcategories and things like that. And most of all, a good customer-centric experience is going to lean heavily into your search engine. So there used to be this kind of idea that a great user experience was resolving a query in like 2 or 3 clicks. This is like Web 2.0 era. And now with the like advent of all these different kinds of search engines and powerful search engines, that's not strictly true anymore. And I know a lot of SEO people are probably going to shout at me, or a lot of customer experience people are probably going to shout at me for that. But it's the reason I say that is that search is so much more sophisticated that people just want an answer straight away. And when it comes to using tags and categories and things like that, you need to appeal to how your search engine works. So in terms of how we do that with Help Docs, actually, let me just back up a little bit first and talk about sort of these tags, because what you want to do with your tags is just kind of be deliberate. This is more kind of when you're writing the articles and things like that. But when you're categorizing things, you need to be deliberate and make sure that you're not overusing tags. Because what's going to happen is if someone comes in and types in, like I said before, something to do with conveyancing or property law, if you've got 50 or 60 articles that have all used the same tag to do with property law, then your customer's just going to kind of like freak out and not know what they're looking for, not know which article to click on, probably click on the wrong article and fall off out of the funnel as an unqualified lead. So if you're using your kind of tags and things like that in a very precise way, then you can direct your users to where they should be going. Let me just do this quickly.
Matt, are you finding that like there is a strong preference for search versus navigation through folders, like these categories that kind of drill down into articles?
Yeah, so what we're finding most of all is that people do lean heavily on search. Like that's definitely where they go first. That's one of the main reasons we have that kind of the big search bar in most of our templates, is that that's where customers want to go. It's one of those things that's kind of being drilled into us, and I think it's kind of a societal thing now that we've got like phones
Google quick answers.
Yeah, right. You've got Alexa, you've got Google, you've got
even finishes your sentence for you as you start typing in a query, right?
Exactly, right. And you can even on a Mac or something like that, you've got things like Spotlight where you can just quickly tap and type in what you're looking for and it'll find it for you. Like
Mm-hmm.
this whole search and find an answer straight away is being drummed into us all the time. And that it translates to everything that we're doing. You know, how many times have you gone to search for something, even, you know, veering off topic slightly, but gone to search for something from a store, not found it and gone, well, I'll go to a different store because I know they'll probably have it. Like it's just one of those things that we do.
Right.
But when it comes to like categories, obviously search engines still use that. They're super intelligent and you know what we actually put into it is great, but they still use that taxonomy and that structure to decide whether or not it's the right thing to display. So if you've got an article that is about, again, conveyancing or something like that, if it's not under property law, if it's under like criminal law or something like that, then chances are your search engine is going to get a little bit confused, right? Because it's not categorized in the right place. It's still basically people develop search engines for people. It's not, so it's always going to be from that kind of customer and human perspective. Everything's going to take on that human perspective of needing to be categorized in the right way.
And one thing actually that comes to mind here when you're talking about tags and categories is the usefulness of using things like related content. Because if you have those 50 articles and they're actually not that related to each other, it's not that useful. But if you are really strict with your use of those tags and categories, then the related content that's displayed kind of at the bottom of each article becomes very useful because it's probably actually closely relevant and related to what that person just read.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, and you'll also find, again, with good software, those like related articles will also they'll get better depending on kind of what's shown. So the more a specific article is shown as a related article, can't talk, and is clicked on, the more often that's actually going to show up because it becomes a like, more popular kind of article. So
it's active learning.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, like I say, I think I've covered this like best categories. So best practices with categories. Again, it's empathy and logic and understanding that user journey. Like I said about the kind of human side of it. Search engines are still are still developed by humans. They're not still human, but they're still developed by humans to solve things for humans. So there's that whole thing of needing things to be kind of categorized and structured really, really specifically. And I think when it comes to categories for your articles, what we're finding is a lot of people kind of veer away from subcategories. They don't want to get too deep into certain levels. So they get 3 levels deep and go, oh, I want to leave it at that, because they've got this idea that, oh, we need things to be completed within 3 clicks. Well, because people are no longer clicking through those levels to get to your answer, but they're searching instead. You can go, 5, 6, 7. I mean, we support infinite subcategories. I wouldn't suggest going 100 subcategories deep. I mean, it'll probably create a very specific kind of user journey, but it'll definitely, definitely sort of 4 or 5 kind of levels deep is absolutely fine. That's not going to be an anything off-putting. Again, things like using descriptions and things like that are always going to help to kind of educate the search engine. And everything that you really do with categories and tags should be to educate that search engine to find the right article to display.
Now, does that also educate Google? I mean, or is it just your own search engine?
Yeah. So everything that we have in Help Docs is all categorized by Google as well. So Google, when the Google search engine crawls the knowledge base, then it'll all kind of create that great structure as well. So and again, that can help with things like SEO and stuff like that. If you've got great content it might be in your help center, but if it does create that kind of, if it's shareable and if it's answering a question in a great way and people go, this is excellent, I need to share it, then it's always going to rank a little bit higher. So that's going to be great for people too. And I think there's the other thing with categories, and especially we find, is that when people come to first starting, like with a knowledge base, they get a little bit what's the word? I guess that it's like there's a brick wall, right? It's like if you sit down and you try and write a blog post and there's just that blinking cursor and you've just got this blank page and you don't know where to start. So what we tend to kind of tell people to do is just use, start off by using what we call bare bones categories. So the getting started, billing category, and FAQs category. So the getting started is everything that a new user would need to know or that asks frequently in order to kind of get the best out of the product or service. Billing, again, covers pretty much everything to do with billing and accounts and stuff like that. And FAQs, rather than being the frequently asked questions, is more everything else. So it's the miscellaneous kind of category. If you've already got that FAQ set up, then those things you'll find naturally just kind of drop in like really easily to those different sections. So once you've done that, obviously, then you can start building out subcategories and other categories. If in your FAQs you find you've got 5 articles that all touch on the same thing in property law, then you can create a category for property law, and you can have them kind of all linked as well. And then you just work out from there. It just gets you over that kind of step of having a blank screen. So that's a little bit about categories anyway. And now I'm going to just touch on how to create customer-centric articles. And there's 2 kind of important parts to a customer-centric article. And the first is kind of asking what the purpose is, whether you're highlighting a feature for products and services and things like that, or whether it's instructional. Whatever it is, there should always be, for every single article, a clear and concise purpose. Now, that whether that's a short article that is just kind of 2 or 3 paragraphs long, or whether that's a long article that's kind of a deep dive, it should still be a singular purpose. Just because when someone goes looking for an answer, they want to find an answer. They don't want to find 10, 15, 20 answers all in one page. They want to be able to see what they want and then move off. Same goes for search engines as well. Makes it easier to just highlight that content and have it as the right resolution, essentially. And again, use the same method as you would use to decide on your FAQs. You know, what are my customers talking about? What are my potential clients and leads kind of asking me before they get to this stage? That should be your purpose. And again, you can use your FAQ articles that you've already written as your kind of guide there as well. The second thing is, who is the intended reader? What is the kind of almost the level of the intended reader in terms of how much they know about your industry? And you should write to the least savvy reader within that kind of spectrum. Obviously, if you're a developer and you're writing developer documentation, then you're not going to dumb it down to the point where it is, a grade 3 level kind of reading. You're going to have that. There's a certain level of expectation in terms of like the knowledge and language that's going to be used. But if you're a solicitor, for example, talking to someone who is completely not a solicitor, then you need to make sure that that person is going to get their answer in words that they can understand. That's kind of the whole point of it being customer centric, is that they can understand and act upon it.
And also, even the question that they're asking could indicate their level of knowledge or expertise.
Yes. And the last question there, obviously, if you think there's more than one reader, chances are there's more than one article. So by that, I mean, if you think, oh, this I'm going to write for a vendor and a user, well, maybe that's 2 different articles. So when it comes to actually writing the article, there's kind of, I guess these are pretty much the 6 steps that you would use to almost write anything. I think, in my opinion, this is pretty much what I use to write blog posts and what I use to write customer centric articles and things like that as well. So you start off with your kind of outline, with what you want to what you aim to kind of achieve with your article, and then you just go ahead and draft it. I know that's it's kind of what people say every single time, right? Is just sit down and write. But write out your answer and just kind of get it onto the page. The next thing you want to do is kind of go and get feedback from people who either don't know or just anyone that's not you, because you've written the article. You're going to read it back and you're going to go, okay, well, I understand what that says. If you get someone who hasn't written the article to read it back, then at least you're getting their perspective on it, and you can then adjust it to make sure that what you say actually makes sense to someone that isn't you. From there, you want to kind of revise it and add in screenshots and GIFs and videos, and it just makes sure that it's going to kind of break up the article a little bit and make sure your user doesn't get fatigued trying to follow any steps or things like that. And then last step before publishing, go back to that same person, get feedback, make sure they understand it again, and then go ahead and just hit publish. From there, once you've written that article and you've published it, a lot of people kind of think, oh, well, that's it then, and I can just leave that to be live and whatever. But you kind of want to be monitoring the article. Now, what we suggest you do is look at things like feedback, user feedback, and things like that, and look at the analytics data around kind of tickets avoided and the number of people that are basically going there and who are not contacting your company or you as a result of visiting the article. Whether or not they leave actual feedback, like the positive, neutral, or negative that we kind of have in help docs, it's great if they do that. But if they go there and they don't contact you, that's kind of a win. If they've gone to that article and they've gone, okay, well, I don't need to, and obviously unless the purpose of the article is to encourage them to contact you. But if they've gone there and they've not contacted you in terms of needing support or needing an answer to that question, then that's a win.
You know, one thing also, Matt, that I would think is that if you have Google Analytics plugged in, like you could look at your exit pages. Mm-hmm. And as long as you have these pages that are like in Google Analytics, you could say, okay, the person like was on this page or started on this page or at some point was on this page, and then what page did they exit on? And you can see, oh, did they end up looking at another help article, or did they end up typing in another query to say, did that address their needs, or did that prompt another question that they did or didn't know that they had, and they ended up accessing this page and then leaving or then calling or not calling.
Exactly, yeah. Was it a related search that they did, or was it something completely different that had no bearing on it or something like that? Using all that kind of analytics data will give you, it's really great to create like a good overview of who your customers are as well. And after a while, you tend to kind of see like trends and things like that. Like you see things that people are searching about a lot. A lot of the time, your top sort of 5 or 6 trends are going to be like they're going to be quite obvious things, and it means that you can then go, this is becoming a trend. I've got 20 or 30 searches for the same question, or a related question. I can go ahead and write an article about that, and then you've nailed those kind of questions, that the response to those questions, and those people can then become warmer leads as a result of it, which is great. But if we go back to the article, I'll just look at I'll do a quick breakdown. I know we haven't got very much time. We're probably going to overrun here. But, yeah. We'll just do a quick breakdown of what goes into a customer-centric article. So when it comes to the title is going to be what the article is about. It needs to be clear and concise. So you don't want to be like clever with your title. It needs to really relate to what the question is. So for example, here we've got just the title of adding a table of contents. It's simple, it's effective. You know what that article is going to have in it. If you're looking for an answer to that question, how do I add a table of contents? There's your answer. From there, the intro to your article. Now, not every article needs an introduction, but a lot of it's kind of best practice, I guess. It just kind of gives context for what the answer is going to be and sets the user up or the reader up for the answer that you're about to present. So in this example here, If you're writing guides or long form articles, you might want to add a table of contents. This makes it way easier for people to navigate your article. It's very simple. It's very effective. Tells you exactly what the article is going to be about, and kind of sets you up for the rest of it. At that point, if you don't need to know that information, then you're going to leave and you'll be fine. Obviously, the main body is going to be the bulk of the article, where all your answers going to lie, all the steps and things like that. If you're doing step-by-step instructions, then that's where those would go. And like I've said here, always use numbered steps. Now, we do support bullets and things like that, but we tend to advise they're more for kind of asides and just like lists and things like that. If you're doing a step-by-step instruction, having the 1, 2, 3, 4 is always going to be better in terms of customer centricity, because it means that people can't get lost. And I know that feels silly, and it feels like you're kind of hand-holding and things like that. But like I said before, you always have to write to the least savvy person. You have to assume that people are going to get lost. And by having numbered steps, you're reducing the risk of failure. And everything that you do should be kind of aimed towards reducing that risk of someone failing and kind of leaving your article kind of really angry. A few more tips here, as you see: keep it short and simple. Break articles up with media. By that I mean sort of illustrative GIFs or videos that kind of show and reinforce what you're talking about, just to again sort of stop fatigue and things like that. Be consistent with your language and style, and break down long articles. Now, this last point, breaking down long articles, is kind of one of my favorite ones to bring up, because not a lot of people tend to do it. Now, we said before about if you want to do a deep dive, you kind of can do a deep dive, and we do quite a lot on the Help Docs knowledge base. There are loads of articles where we've gone sort of 1,000 words in and have kind of gone, okay, well, this is a bit too much. But it's, as you say, it's a deep dive into a specific topic, so that's fine. Generally speaking, when you're doing kind of single purpose answers, like writing a really long kind of article isn't going to kind of cut the mustard. It needs to be kind of broken down into smaller sections, and that's going to be more customer centric. The reason being, chances are people's questions aren't going to be that general. They're going to be about a specific way to do something, like how do I don't know, contact you, or what information do I need to send you, or whatever it is. How are you going to verify my identity? I don't know, whatever it happens to be anyway. But all these things need to be broken down into separate articles. We certainly don't suggest doing things that are like 2,000 words long. It's a really bad idea. So I've included some examples of like a main body here. You'll see there's step-by-step instructions and images and things like that, and a little call out for warnings.
Matt, one question: do you have a recommended software for capturing video demos, or do you guys offer that? I didn't think so.
So we don't offer that. No. What I use for capturing GIFs is something called LiceCap, but there's also things. What else have I got? I use what's it called? ScreenFlow, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to say ScreenFlow, which is again something for screen capture and things like that. But there's other things like Wistia.
LiceCap is very good for screen capture. Actually, I use that. I was just recommending that earlier today.
Yeah. You
can mark it up at the same time.
Sorry?
You can mark it up. For example, often what I find when I'm writing help docs actually for smith.ai is, not to get too off track here, but when I do a screenshot, I will put arrows in, overlay on top of it, and then any text, and then boom, you have your media. It's done. You don't need to go into another program to write over it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of that. But yeah, the other thing that you'll find, and this is going back to the search kind of aspect of things, is the description and the metadata. And this is where kind of search kind of comes into its own. Now, your description should be a concise summary of your article, and what it sits at on the I'm here kind of scrolling around on my computer, and I don't realize that you can't see it. On the left here, you can see what we have as kind of a category card, or a description card, sorry, for an article. And that description there is what users are going to see when they first land on like a category page or something like that. It's also what's going to be brought into the search, kind of quick search results and things. And on the right, you'll see an example of the short version, which is what brings into our Chrome extension. So when you type in on our Chrome extension, if you type in kind of a query, this is more for the kind of support side of things. It'll bring up that short version, which you're able to kind of share instantly with your customers as well, which is kind of, if you're using things like live chat where we haven't yet integrated, it's a really great way to kind of just drop a response like straight into there. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. Just to kind of recap what I went through. First, you need to figure out if you need a knowledge base, and before you do that, try using an FAQ first, and then graduate once you outgrow the need of an FAQ. So once your users are kind of scrolling endlessly. Always write articles with a clear purpose. Structure your documents with logic and empathy, and don't overuse tags, obviously for search engine purposes. Use the right language and avoid jargon. Write articles for the least savvy customer, and keep it short and simple. So that's pretty much everything, I think, from my angle.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. I mean, I guess just to wrap it up, what do you do? How do you get started? Do you even have FAQ on your website? Are you, answering all your calls yourself in every email and text? Just take a look at a week of what you're working on for client work, billable work, and then non-billable work. So all of these admin tasks, even if you have a knowledge base, how much time are you spending writing articles, and what can you do to streamline it? What are the things that you just simply can't hand off? Be really honest with yourself about that, and kind of confront your existing, expectations of what you have time for truly. And then automate and outsource what you can once you kind of have the processes and documentation in place. Who else knows enough about your business, who's in-house, or who can do a very good job for kind of some of the initial communication tasks on your behalf, with just a little bit of training from you to get people the information they need to prevent the interruptions and those distractions that happen when you're doing everything yourself. In terms of prioritizing, I often recommend, and I encourage you to check out this link to the Eisenhower Decision Matrix. It really gets into the importance versus the urgency of tasks, and how to prioritize working on certain things that may or may not feel urgent and may or may not feel important, and how does that determine if you do it or if someone else does it, or if it's done now or later. Address kind of the top 3, I would say, maybe if it's 1 to 2 in the next 30 to 60 days. It just depends on how much you're able to bite off, keeping in mind that you're putting your future self first here. You're trying to really say, I'm going to set myself up for a great 2019 because I'm going to invest this time, a little bit of extra time on this administrative side of things that sets me up for spending less time on the admin side of things in the future, and converting more leads and allowing people to DIY a bit more and giving people the access they need for information, so you reduce those interruptions. And then once you do that, kind of wait a month or two and restabilize and say, how did this impact me? By putting those FAQs on my website, by launching a live website chat it's contagious, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Having that website chat, how am I stemming the calls and emails that are coming in with those two things? And even do them one by one. First, the FAQ, how does that change my call and email volume? Then the website chat, how does that change my call and email volume? and then determine like, okay, what's the next thing on my list that I expect to have a high impact, and not just assessing the impact here on like the quality and the volume of the leads who are coming in, the satisfaction and the online reviews that are coming from existing clients, but also what is your work-life balance? What is your stress levels and sleep quality looking like? Talking not just about the quantitative, but also the qualitative factors here. If you would like to get in touch with us, I really encourage you to email, access, this document, this webinar, re-listen to certain sections, and then get in touch with us. If you would like to get started with Help Docs, you can use the code smith.ai to get 20% off for 3 months. If you want to, get started with Smith.ai Receptionists for calls or chats, you can get $50 off your first month with the code HelpDocs50. That's HelpDocs50. And that is in addition to our 10 call or 5 chat free trial. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that information was helpful to you. And please reach out if you have any questions, but looking forward to seeing, better responsiveness and better lead conversion and increased client satisfaction as you put these tips to use.